From the earliest days of digital disruption, where unforeseen code errors could inadvertently bring complex systems to a halt, the landscape of cyber incursions has steadily evolved in both complexity and intent. Initially, many breaches were the result of curiosity or an exploration of system limits, often by individuals driven by intellectual challenge. We have seen the deliberate and often highly publicized probes of individuals like Kevin Mitnick, whose exploits in the 1980s and 90s showcased the vulnerabilities of telecommunications and computer networks. Mitnick, often dubbed the Condor or the Dark Side hacker, became a symbol of early hacking culture, demonstrating how social engineering and technical acumen could grant access to seemingly secure environments. His activities highlighted the nascent understanding of digital security at the time and the significant impact a single determined individual could have. Following this era, the digital world witnessed the widespread and often devastating impact of self-replicating programs, such as the Morris worm in 1988, which brought a significant portion of the nascent internet to a standstill. This incident, one of the first major computer worms distributed via the internet, demonstrated the potential for unintended but vast disruption, affecting approximately 10% of the computers connected to the network at the time. More recently, the digital realm has seen the rise of highly sophisticated state-sponsored operations, exemplified by Stuxnet, a complex computer worm discovered in 2010. Stuxnet specifically targeted industrial control systems, particularly those used in uranium enrichment centrifuges, and is widely believed to have been designed to disrupt Iran's nuclear program. This progression highlights a broad spectrum of motivations behind cyber activities, ranging from simple curiosity and youthful defiance to complex espionage, industrial sabotage, and even political protest. Yet, amidst these diverse and often well-understood drivers, one hacker's journey stands out for its singular, almost fantastical goal: the unwavering search for evidence of extraterrestrial life. Gary McKinnon, a British systems administrator with a deep interest in the unexplained, embarked on this extraordinary quest in the early 2000s. His journey into the highly secured digital fortresses of the United States military and NASA began in February 2001 and continued systematically until March 2002. During this 13-month period, he managed to infiltrate an astonishing 97 United States military and NASA computers, systematically exploring networks belonging to the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Department of Defense, and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Unlike many of his hacking predecessors and contemporaries, McKinnon's motivation was not financial gain, nor was it political protest in the traditional sense of exposing government secrets for public accountability. Instead, his actions were driven by a deeply held and intensely personal conviction that these highly secured government networks contained hidden evidence of unidentified flying objects, advanced anti-gravity propulsion technology, and suppressed free energy sources that could revolutionize humanity's future. He was heavily influenced by the Disclosure Project, an initiative founded by Dr. Stephen Greer, which claimed to have gathered hundreds of testimonies from government and military witnesses regarding a systematic cover-up of UFO information and advanced technologies. McKinnon believed these testimonies were credible and that the truth was hidden within the digital archives of the most powerful institutions, waiting to be uncovered. Operating under the online alias Solo, a moniker that perhaps reflected his solitary pursuit of these hidden truths, McKinnon conducted his activities from a seemingly innocuous and decidedly low-tech location, his girlfriend's aunt's house in North London. This suburban setting stood in stark contrast to the high-stakes, highly sensitive networks he was breaching, which included systems vital to national security. His methods, while ultimately effective in gaining access, were not always complex or indicative of advanced hacking prowess. Instead, he often exploited known vulnerabilities in Windows operating systems, particularly those related to default configurations and inadequate security practices. Many of the systems he targeted were running older versions of Windows, such as Windows NT 4.0 or Windows 2000, which had well-documented security flaws. A key tool in his arsenal was a Perl script, a relatively simple programming language often used for system administration tasks and text processing. McKinnon leveraged this script to scan vast numbers of machines across the internet, casting a wide net in his search for weaknesses. This script targeted up to 65,000 computers, systematically seeking out those with inadequate password protection or weak firewall configurations. Astonishingly, and perhaps indicative of the general state of network security at the time, he frequently found systems still protected only by easily guessable default passwords, or with no passwords at all, providing him with relatively easy and often unnoticed access to highly sensitive government and military networks. He exploited the trust relationships between these interconnected networks, moving from one compromised system to another, deepening his penetration into the digital infrastructure. Once inside these networks, McKinnon was accused by US authorities of causing significant and costly disruption. They alleged he deleted critical operating system files, particularly those related to system logs and user accounts, which led to the shutdown of the US Army's Military District of Washington network for a full 24 hours. This extensive outage affected an estimated 2,000 computers, severely impacting the day-to-day operations and communications of a crucial military command responsible for the security of the capital region. Furthermore, he was accused of rendering 300 computers at the U.S. Naval Weapons Station Earl in New Jersey unusable by deleting essential system files. This particular incident occurred immediately after the devastating terror attacks of September 11, 2001, a time of unprecedented national security concerns and heightened vigilance across all U.S. government agencies. The timing of these alleged disruptions significantly amplified the perceived severity of his actions, transforming them from simple computer intrusions into acts potentially undermining national security during a period of acute crisis. The US government categorized his actions not merely as data theft or unauthorized access, but as deliberate sabotage, particularly given the critical functions of the affected military systems. The estimated cost of tracking, investigating, and rectifying the problems caused by McKinnon's intrusions was substantial, with US authorities putting the figure at over $700,000. This figure encompassed the expenses for forensic analysis to determine the extent of the damage, system restoration and data recovery efforts, and the implementation of enhanced security measures across the affected networks to prevent future breaches. This included patching vulnerabilities, strengthening password policies, and upgrading outdated systems. McKinnon, however, maintained throughout his legal battles that his primary objective was discovery, not destruction or malicious damage. He consistently argued that any deletions were either accidental, a byproduct of his attempts to cover his tracks by removing log files, or simply an attempt to gain more storage space on compromised servers for the files he was downloading. He steadfastly claimed to have found compelling evidence during his unauthorized explorations. During one of his infiltrations into a computer at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, he alleged he located a folder titled Unfiltered. Within this folder, he claimed to have found a high-resolution thumbnail image of a cigar-shaped object, purportedly with a clear dome at its top and bottom, which he believed was an image of an extraterrestrial craft. He also stated he found documentation regarding the processing of such objects, though the exact nature of this documentation remained somewhat vague, referring to a kind of material analysis or scientific study. Even more remarkably, McKinnon stated he discovered an Excel spreadsheet titled Non-Terrestrial Officers. This document, he claimed, listed names and ranks alongside off-world ship assignments. For McKinnon, these findings were not merely speculative or the product of an overactive imagination. They were, in his view, tangible proof supporting his deeply held belief in a hidden truth about humanity's place in the cosmos and the existence of advanced, undisclosed technologies. He interpreted non-terrestrial officers to mean individuals who held positions on spacecraft that were not of Earth origin, potentially human personnel assigned to secret space programs, and off-world ship assignments as deployment orders to these extraterrestrial vessels or advanced terrestrial craft operating beyond Earth's atmosphere. These alleged discoveries fueled his conviction that governments were actively concealing monumental truths from the public, and that his actions, though illegal, were justified in the pursuit of this greater revelation. He believed he was merely exposing what was already there, patiently waiting to be found, and that the public had a right to know. The alleged existence of such a document, if true, would imply a clandestine space fleet or an advanced program far beyond official public knowledge. The legal repercussions for McKinnon began swiftly and decisively on March 19, 2002, when he was first interviewed by UK police. This initial questioning was conducted at the direct request of the United States authorities, signalling the international scope and seriousness with which his actions were already being viewed. The investigation soon escalated beyond a domestic inquiry. In November 2002, a US federal grand jury formally indicted McKinnon on 7 counts of computer-related crime. These charges were severe, including unauthorized access to computers, damaging government computers, and interfering with national defense. Each of these charges carried a potential sentence of 10 years in prison, meaning McKinnon faced the prospect of spending up to 70 years in a US federal penitentiary, a clear indication of the seriousness with which US authorities viewed his actions and the perceived threat he posed to their national security infrastructure. The US Department of Justice considered him a significant cyber threat, particularly given the timing of his activities post-September 11th. The US government initiated the formal extradition process in October 2004, seeking to bring McKinnon to the United States to stand trial for his alleged crimes. Following this, McKinnon was subsequently arrested in London on June 7, 2005, marking the official beginning of what would become a prolonged and intense legal battle. This fight against extradition lasted nearly a decade, transforming McKinnon's case into a cause célèbre and a focal point for broader debates surrounding international extradition laws, the delicate balance of national sovereignty versus international legal cooperation, and the rights of individuals accused of cybercrimes committed across borders. The case attracted significant public attention, drawing support from a wide array of individuals and organizations who viewed McKinnon as a sympathetic figure, a curious individual rather than a malicious criminal. Petitions were signed, protests were held, and public discourse often centered on whether a British citizen should be tried in the US for crimes committed from British soil, especially when the intent was not malice. A crucial development in his defense came in August 2008, when Gary McKinnon was formally diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, a condition on the autism spectrum. This diagnosis profoundly impacted his legal fight against extradition, providing his legal team with a powerful new argument. They contended that his neurological condition explained his intense, obsessive focus on UFOs and his difficulty in fully comprehending the potential severe consequences of his actions. Individuals with Asperger's often exhibit highly focused, almost monomaniacal interests and can struggle with social cues and understanding the broader implications of their behavior. His legal team argued vehemently that extraditing him to the United States, where he faced the prospect of a lengthy prison sentence in an unfamiliar and potentially overwhelming environment, would pose an extreme and unacceptable risk to his mental health. They warned that such a move could lead to severe psychological distress, potentially resulting in self-harm or even suicide, given his particular vulnerabilities and the structured, often rigid, environment of a prison. The fight against extradition continued for several more years, garnering significant public support and drawing the backing of various public figures, celebrities, and mental health advocates. Organizations like the National Autistic Society also lent their voice to his cause, highlighting the specific challenges individuals with Asperger's syndrome might face in the justice system, particularly when removed from their established support networks. Finally, on October 16, 2012, after years of legal appeals, public campaigns, and political pressure, then Home Secretary Theresa May delivered a landmark decision that would effectively alter the course of McKinnon's life. She blocked his extradition to the United States. Her reasoning was explicit and unequivocal. There was a high risk of him ending his life due to his severe mental health condition, exacerbated by the prospect of an alien and daunting prison system far from his family and support. Sending him to the US, she concluded, would therefore be incompatible with his fundamental human rights, specifically citing Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which prohibits inhuman or degrading treatment. This decision represented a significant victory for human rights considerations in extradition cases. This decision was a significant victory for McKinnon and his dedicated supporters, effectively bringing an end to the immediate threat of him facing trial and imprisonment in the US. The Home Secretary's intervention was a rare and powerful use of executive discretion in an extradition case, underscoring the extraordinary circumstances of McKinnon's situation and the compelling medical evidence presented. 2 months after the extradition block, the Crown Prosecution Service in the UK reviewed the case to determine if McKinnon should be prosecuted in his home country for the same offences. However, they ultimately decided not to proceed with a domestic prosecution. Their stated reasons included the security difficulties involved in obtaining and presenting evidence from US government systems in a UK court, which would involve complex international legal assistance and potential issues with classified information, and crucially, the lapse of time since the original intrusions, which made a successful prosecution significantly more challenging due to faded memories, lost evidence, and the difficulty of bringing a case years after the events occurred. This decision effectively meant that Gary McKinnon would not face criminal charges for his actions in either the United States or the United Kingdom, closing a long and arduous chapter in his life. McKinnon's digital footprints, however, were not entirely erased. He had admitted to leaving messages on some of the compromised systems, a small act of defiance, or perhaps a final, frustrated communication. One such message, stark and undeniably defiant, simply read, "Your security is crap." This final, understated act of communication underscored both the audacity of his singular quest and the significant vulnerabilities he had so readily exposed within the digital infrastructure of some of the world's most powerful institutions in his earnest, if misguided, search for what he believed to be hidden truths about the universe. His story remains a unique chapter in the history of cybercrime, driven by a profound personal conviction rather than conventional motives, and ultimately shaped by complex legal and ethical considerations surrounding mental health and international justice. It serves as a compelling narrative about the intersection of personal belief, digital exploration, and the intricate machinery of national and international law.